We also want to talk about the extreme Republican economic plans. Apparently, they're generally serious about cutting Social Security, cutting Medicare.
House Republicans have made it clear they are committed to cutting spending. And some have hinted they are looking at making big changes to Social Security and Medicare. But earlier this month, Speaker McCarthy made it sound like those programs, they were going to be safe.
The one thing I will tell you as Republicans, we will always protect Medicare and Social Security. We will protect that for the next generation going forward.
Well, that's what he said a few weeks ago. But today, the Washington Post reports the House GOP is already focusing on proposals to significantly change those programs. According to the Post, the government says some 66 million seniors are on Social Security and more than 59 million people are in a Medicare plan. So let's discuss with Philip Bump, national columnist for the Washington Post and author of The Aftermath, The Last Days of the Baby Boom and the Future of Power in America. This new book is out today. Philip, older Americans are a huge part of the GOP's voting base.
Right.
Do they even know that their lawmakers, the one they support, the ones they vote for, could be looking to cut or change Social Security and Medicare, the safety nets, the lifeline many seniors rely on?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's long been a disconnect between people's awareness of what elected officials are doing and what the elected officials are doing. And in part, that's because elected officials are very careful about talking about things in ways that can't be excerpted to have them presenting an unpopular opinion, right? So you see Kevin McCarthy there saying things like, we're not going to touch these. And, you know, perhaps he can later rationalize it because, well, what we did is we changed this particular rule to reduce spending. One of the things that was fascinating about the emergence of Donald Trump in 2016 was he was very specific in combating his party's ongoing narrative, which was very explicit, not in the way that McCarthy was, very explicit, particularly at that time, about cutting these particular programs. And part of that is because they recognized their base was getting older, right? That Republicans were getting older. They were getting to retirement age. And we actually saw a decrease in chatter on the right about these issues as being priorities. So it's not surprising they want to cut them. If they want to cut spending, they almost have to cut that if they want to significantly affect spending. But it's also not a surprise that they would try and moderate the way in which they talk about it publicly and to their base.
Well, let's talk about these boomers, because
Sure.
right in the beginning of the book, you write, the boom started, the boom ended, and we have been dealing with the shockwave ever since.
Sure.
What does that mean?
Well, you have to think about the fact that in 1945, there's 140 million people in America.
I don't think that much about 1945.
Well, now's the time to start. Over the course of the next 19 years, 76 million kids were born, babies, right? That's more than 50% of the population before the boom. That's a huge disruption to the United States. You have to build more schools. You have to find jobs for them once they graduate. You get more kids going to college in part because they have to do something, right? There are all these ways in which the boom breaks American systems, and American systems have to be reshaped around them. That continues today. We forget that the boom was so big and that it was such a big part of the population until we get to a point where now they're all starting to retire. And we got to start building senior housing. We got to start taking care of them as older Americans.
But they're not the biggest generation anymore. Millennials are. So why do boomers still have such a disproportionate amount of power and control? Because they're the ones in office?
To some extent, yeah, but also because they are forcing conversations that didn't have to happen until now. Because again, yes, they are smaller than they used to be. That's, natural attrition that occurs, but it is still the case we have far more old people now than we used to, and we have to accommodate them. And what we also have is we have a boomer generation that's older that is now for the first time having to compete with a similarly sized generation. They're having to compete for resources. It used to be whatever the boomers needed, throw it at the boomers. And now it's like, well, the millennials also need things like childcare and education. Mm-hmm. And that's competing for federal funding, state funding, local funding. And the boomers aren't used to that.
You spend a significant part of this book focused on the state of Florida.
Yeah.
What can the Sunshine State tell us about the future of politics?
So one of the things
It's a weird
that's fascinating.
state.
It's an unusual state. Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, it's interesting, too, because it's almost microcosmic, right? You have big cities and you have rural areas and you have very, very densely conservative areas and very democratic areas. And you also have a demography that is actually mirrors very closely what the Census Bureau expects America broadly to look like in 2060. Very high density of Hispanics, a lot of older people, because obviously the baby boomers are going to continue to get older. So Florida looks demographically like what the Census Bureau thinks America will look like. Does that mean American politics will look like Florida politics? Probably not, because Florida has some very unique characteristics to its demography. But it still is something to keep an eye on, simply as a representation of the way in which America is expected to change.
Less alligators in other parts of the country.
Presumably. Global warming, you never know.
That is true. All right, right here on the show, we like to say the truth matters, but only if you hear it. And throughout this book, you bust a whole lot of myths, political myths that are out there. And there's one that people often assume, that voters become more conservative the older they get. For fact's sake, can you tell us if this is actually the truth?
There are two qualifiers that I would say. I would say, first of all, that no, it's not really well established that that is the consistent pattern, in part because we really don't have that much social science research and polling that goes back very far, in part because what we mean by conservative changes over time, right? Conservatives 20 years ago aren't necessarily conservative on the same positions that they would be today. But also, one of the things I think is really important to remember is the younger American population is much more democratic, not only because they are younger, but also because they're much less densely white than older Americans. You have a lot more Hispanics, African Americans, Asian Americans, groups which tend to vote more Democratic anyway. So we've never seen a young, diverse population get old. So we don't know if they are going to continue to be Democratic, more heavily Democratic voting, even if that were true, that in the past this has always been the pattern, which isn't established. This is such a unique and different generation. I don't think that necessarily holds anyway. And
the definition of conservative, really important point, is changing right before our eyes. Congratulations on your new book. Thanks for coming on.